So we're really diving into the architecture of belief itself. We're looking at how these systems that seem so different, I mean, from ancient Zoroastrianism to the mystery schools of Mithraism to Christianity to Hinduism.
How they're actually built on the exact same fundamental patterns. When you lay these sources out side by side, something pretty profound happens. Well, the history of faith stops looking like this series of, dramatic, conflicting triumphs, one religion just replacing the next. And it starts to look more like a slow, deliberate generational refinement of a common, core spiritual human need. The goal here is to look past the specific earthly form and find the shared ideas that are still influencing us today.
Okay, let's unpack this. I think a good place to start is with the most persistent thread I saw woven through almost all of this history, and that's the number 7.
Yes. The ubiquitous significance of 7. It just pops up everywhere.
Everywhere, from the ancient Near East all the way to modern religious practice.
It's truly a kind of sacred geometry. It's a number that signifies cycles, completion, structure. I mean, if we just start with the Bible, you immediately see 7 used to establish this divine order.
The 7 days of creation.
The 7 days of creation, exactly. It sets the whole rhythm of existence. And then you jump to the book of Revelation, and you see this drama of the end times played out through what? The 7 seals, the 7 angels with trumpets, the 7 last plagues.
And it's not just these big cosmic events, right? It seems to dictate human behavior, too. The ethical structures are built around it. You've got the 7 deadly sins.
Lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, pride. And in response,
The 7 heavenly virtues. The blueprint for how to master yourself.
exactly. So the number is used both to describe the cosmological structure and the moral architecture you need to navigate it. And you find similar patterns in, say, Judaism, where Shiva dictates the 7-day period of intense mourning.
The completed cycle of loss.
The completed cycle. And in Islam, the Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran, contains 7 essential verses.
The Quran also says that Allah created 7 skies and as many lands. And then hell is described as having 7 gates.
7 gates and 7 hells. So the number really does encompass the entire scale of existence, from the absolute highest point down to the lowest.
That consistency is what's so striking.
Yeah.
Now, if you look eastward to traditions like Hinduism,
Same pattern. You see 7 worlds in the universe, the 7 great rishis or gurus, and of course the foundational energetic model of the 7 chakras.
which represent the stages of spiritual ascent within the human body.
Right. So what's the driving force behind this obsession? Why 7 specifically? The sources really connect it back to fundamental astronomy,
What we could see in the sky.
what you could see. To the ancient observer, there were 7 celestial bodies that visibly moved. The sun, the moon, and the 5 planets you could see with the naked eye. That septenary structure, the 7 spheres, it literally defined the heavens.
So the architecture of the cosmos is reflected in the structure of the self. That makes a lot of sense. And this is where it gets really interesting when we look at the mystery schools, like Mithraism.
The Roman soldier cult. Mithraism was structured entirely around 7 stages of spiritual progress. Their ceremonial scale had 7 levels, each one made of a different metal.
And each metal was associated with one of those 7 celestial bodies we just mentioned.
Precisely. And they had the 7 initiatory grades, which weren't just titles. They were the raven, the griffin, the soldier, the lion, the Persian, the heliodrome, and finally, the father.
And that's not a random list.
Not at all. Each grade was believed to correspond to a passage through one of those celestial spheres. It was a kind of celestial travel, a purification. The initiations were a physical and philosophical journey through the cosmos.
Culminating in the highest stage, the father, who had completed all 7 steps.
And what's amazing, your sources point out that even geographically isolated traditions echo this. The Hopi tradition in Arizona, in their creation myth, talks about the creator molding substance into 9 universal kingdoms.
But reserving the final 7 for the life to come, which sounds a lot like the 7 biblical days of creation.
The synthesis is just unavoidable. Whether you're looking at Eastern philosophy, Abrahamic texts, or these esoteric cults, the number 7 consistently codes the same idea: spiritual ascent, cosmic structure, and ultimate completion.
So the universe is built on 7, but who defined the conflict within that structure? For that, we have to go east to the architects of cosmic conflict, Zoroastrianism.
A massive influence on Western thought that we often overlook.
We really do.
Yeah, and it's crucial to remember that Judaism and Zoroastrianism flourished side by side for about 500 years in the Eastern Mediterranean. There was significant cross-pollination.
And the main contribution from Zoroastrianism was this idea of pronounced vertical dualism. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means the universe is split categorically along a vertical axis between two absolute warring forces. On one side, you have divine order, which they called atisha.
Which is like cosmic law and truth, not just goodness.
Exactly. Very comparable to merit in the Egyptian tradition. And on the other side, you have Drud, the absolute force of chaos, falsehood, and destruction.
So from the very beginning, the universe isn't just a creation, it's a battleground.
Precisely. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, this is where the Western narrative of cosmic conflict gets its teeth. Many scholars argue that the later presence of Satan in Abrahamic traditions, not as a rebellious servant, but as an independent cosmic force.
That has Zoroastrian roots.
It strongly suggests it. And the high drama of the end times, the famous Armageddon narrative in Revelation.
Well, it's a Zoroastrian echo, too.
It really is. This dualistic structure fundamentally shaped the Western world's concept of eternal conflict and ultimate salvation.
And we can see the direct connection to Mithraism right inside the Persian pantheon. Ahura Mazda, the creator spirit, the source of Esha. He has a divine relationship with Mithra,
who is often associated with the sun. And we know these deities were absolutely central to the worldview of powerful empires like the Achaemenids. King Artaxerxes II, for example, publicly invoked Ahura Mazda, Anahita, and Mithra to protect him and his buildings from evil.
So Mithra wasn't just some minor deity. He was central to state-level cosmology.
Absolutely. Which brings us right to the third point in your sources. The famous comparisons between Mithraism and early Christianity.
Right. They developed in close proximity in the Roman Empire, and they get conflated all the time.
The technical similarities are fascinating. I mean, just consider the solar cults. The Feast of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, a title widely used for Mithras, was celebrated on December 25th.
The same day later adopted for the birth of Christ. That can't be a coincidence.
Hardly. The sources suggest Emperor Constantine actively encouraged this merger. It was a brilliant political move to unify the empire under a shared sacred calendar. He also made Sunday, the Day of the Sun, a Christian holy day. The blending was rampant.
So let's talk about the central myth, the tauroctony. That's the image we always see, with Mithra slaying a bull.
The tauroctony is the Mithraic equivalent of the crucifixion. It's the central sacrificial act. Mithra reluctantly performs this act, and as he slays the bull, whose Persian name literally means life, its vitality spills onto the earth, releasing fertility and creation.
And that myth is profoundly ancient.
It's thought to date back maybe 3,000 years BCE, possibly linked to an astronomical event, the conjunction of the sun and the sign of Taurus at the vernal equinox.
Okay, so despite these really powerful overlaps, the solar imagery, December 25th, the sacrifice, your sources highlight a profound philosophical difference.
Yes, and this is where that earthly form really matters. Mithra was explicitly a mythological god. His sacrifices, his sufferings, they were all based on long tradition, on legend. He existed in the cosmic realm.
But the Judeo-Christian tradition grounds its faith entirely in history. It asserts that Jesus Christ was a living, suffering human who existed in specific, traceable places.
Right. Faith was based on textual revelation and a recent historical event. That's the fundamental difference in form. But this raises a critical question.
Which is?
If both of these traditions gained millions of followers across the Roman Empire so quickly, wasn't the philosophical appeal stronger than the historical fact?
What do you mean by that?
Well, both systems shared the basic idea of a compassionate, all-powerful cosmic God offering inner peace and salvation, a path out of that conflict we were just talking about.
So whether the savior was a historical man or a mythological sun deity?
The function of the belief system was identical. It was meeting a universal human spiritual need for transcendence. And that common need, that's the biggest takeaway here.
That's a perfect link. We've looked at cosmic structure, cosmic conflict. Let's move now to the underlying esoteric philosophy that drove the ancient mystery schools. They aim for something called the living resurrection, or the great work.
Yes, and this work demanded the ultimate act of self-mastery. The goal was the elevation of the lower animal self, our purely instinctive being, into the higher spiritual self.
And to do this before physical death.
That's the key, before physical death.
It sounds a lot like alchemy.
It is the very essence of spiritual alchemy. I mean, the literal alchemists were trying to change base metal into gold, but the philosophical alchemists were aiming for spiritual transmutation.
So changing the base metal of our animal instincts.
Or the lower chakras into the gold of intellect, wisdom, the crown chakra. That was the great work.
And the Greek mystery schools, like the rites at Eleusis, They seem to embody this through ritual, right?
They did. The rites had three powerful phases: descent, search, and ascent. This symbolized the entire cycle of existence: birth, life, death, but also scientifically the cycle of the seasons.
The myth of Persephone.
Exactly. Descending into the underworld with Hades every winter, and then ascending in the spring, bringing life back to the earth. The initiates physically acted out that cycle of death and rebirth.
Okay, so if we start interpreting powerful Christian archetypes through this esoteric lens, these familiar stories take on a totally new meaning. Let's start with the idea of the logos.
The Greek logos. It's often translated in the Gospel of John as the Word, but it means so much more. It means order, knowledge, reason. In this context, the logos represents understanding the world through philosophy and science.
So obedience to God isn't about rote prayer. It's about understanding the natural world.
Yes. Obedience to God, through this lens, is obedience to the laws of nature, to the structure of the universe, to achasha. The initiate seeks to embody the logos, to become one with that cosmic order.
And the crucifixion.
Perhaps the most powerful visual metaphor of all. Jesus on the cross becomes symbolic of man nailed to the 4 points of the material world. The 4 corners of the cross relate directly to the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 seasons of the zodiac wheel.
So his death and resurrection aren't just a historical event.
They symbolize the rising of superior concepts, the spirit from inferior ones, from physical matter. It's a cosmic diagram.
That's a huge shift from a literal execution to a symbol of spirit triumphing over matter. So did the early practitioners of these traditions understand salvation differently than we do today?
Fundamentally differently. In the mystery schools, external saving is rejected. Eternal life is not something awarded to you later, after you die. It's something recognized by the initiate now.
By doing the work.
By doing the work. The initiate who has successfully refined the self, who has turned their base metal to gold, realizes their own eternal and immortal nature through self-mastery.
So the living resurrection is about realizing that immortality is already integrated into the essence of your existence.
It shifts the entire focus from external atonement to internal work.
This has been a true deep dive. We've seen how the number 7 codes creation and the path to completion. We've talked about how Zoroastrian dualism really shaped the whole narrative of cosmic conflict.
We connected Mithraism and Christianity through that shared need for a compassionate God.
And we finalized it by looking at how this ancient wisdom defined redemption not as a singular event in history, but as an internal alchemical process, the great work.
So if the suffering and atonement of Jesus, the Christos or Anointed One, is symbolic of the path we must all take to conquer our lower nature and find our divine self, our inner sun.
And what are we losing?
Exactly. What essential truth about self-mastery and internal transformation is lost when we insist on literalizing these symbols? The pearly gates and golden streets.
Which are just metaphors.
Metaphors for the transmuted, purified spiritual self. What do we lose when we focus on that instead of pursuing the living resurrection that's integrated into our very existence? What does it cost us to seek the treasure externally when the path to eternal gold is already laid out within?